notice that the text clearly states that the old law was not to be altered or diminished in any way. And how can he call love one another a new commandment when he said in Matthew 19:17 and 19:19, and this is him speaking, "But if thou wilt enter into life, keep the commandments, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself," unquote. According to him, it was already an Old Testament commandment. So how could it have been a new commandment? But even more importantly, where is this commandment? The answer is nowhere. There is none. It's not in the Old Testament. Leviticus 19:18 says, "Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself," but that's not among any list of commandments. Everything considered, Jesus created a new commandment in direct violation of biblical injunctions, and then turned around and cited Leviticus 19:18 to show that the commandment which he created was not really new after all. What a maze of discombobulation. Fifth, Matthew 15:1-3 is not only interesting but revealing. The scribes and the Pharisees, of course they follow the old law very closely, the scribes and the Pharisees of Jerusalem came to Jesus and said, "Why do your disciples transgress the tradition of the elders? For they do not wash their hands when they eat bread." Notice what Jesus says in response. "Why do you also transgress the commandment of God by your tradition?" Unquote. He didn't say their criticism was false or deny that his followers transgressed the rule. He didn't deny the truth of their assertion. He merely said, "Well, you do it too." By saying, "Why do you also," rather than denying the accusation, he's conceding their point and merely trying to put his accusers on the defensive. Jesus occasionally operated on the principle that the best defense is a good offense. 6. Luke 6:1-4 says, quote, "It came to pass on the second Sabbath after the first, that he," that is Jesus, "went through the cornfields, and his disciples plucked the ears of corn and did eat. And the Pharisees said to them, Why are you doing that which is not lawful to do on the Sabbath days?" Unquote. In this instance, Jesus and his disciples not only violated the Sabbath by picking ears of corn thereon, but stole property as well. The ears of corn were not theirs to pluck, any more than the Gadarene swine were theirs to destroy, as occurred in Luke 8:33. 7th, in Luke 12:4, Jesus said, "Don't be afraid of those who kill the body, and after that have no more that they can do," unquote. While he loved to talk about being bold and courageous, his behavior exposed an attitude that was noticeably lacking in both. Evidence for this is not hard to find. Matthew 12:14-16 says, "Then the Pharisees went out and held a council against him, how they might destroy him. But when Jesus knew it, he withdrew himself from thence, and great multitudes followed him, and he charged them that they should not make him known." Unquote. In other words, he wanted his whereabouts to be kept a secret. John 7:1 says, "After these things Jesus walked in Galilee, for he would not walk in jewelry, because the Jews sought to kill him." John 11:53-54 says, "Then from that day forth they took counsel to put him to death. Jesus therefore walked no more openly among the Jews, but went to a country near in the wilderness." Unquote. And John 8:59 says, "They took up stones to cast at him, but Jesus hid himself." Unquote. You don't hide from what you don't fear. One could also read John 6:15, 10:39, Matthew 10:23, and Mark 1:45 to see that Jesus was little more than a scared rabbit in many instances, who often felt that discretion was the better part of valor. Courage and bravery were noticeably absent. Better to be a live coward than a dead hero. Eighth, in Luke 8:43-45, a woman came up behind Jesus and touched his garment and he said, "Who touched me?" The obvious question is, if Jesus is God, then why doesn't he know the answer to this question even before it's posed? If Jesus is God, he would be aware of everything and had to have been practicing deception. How could he not have known who was touching him? Ninth, in Matthew 5:22 in the Revised Standard Version, Jesus clearly condemned being angry by saying, quote, "I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother shall be liable to judgment," unquote. Yet in Mark 3:5, Jesus displayed the very anger that he denounced in others. It says, quote, "He," that is Jesus, "looked around at them with anger, grieved at their hardness of heart," unquote. Again, Jesus failed to practice what he preached. 10th,